The tears were real. When Michael Clarke Duncan's massive frame collapsed in that final scene, the crew wasn't acting, they were genuinely mourning. But what most fans never realized is that the most heartbreaking moment on set didn't even make it into the film. It happened in a small trailer between takes with no cameras rolling. And the secret it revealed would change how the cast viewed their roles forever. Before we uncover what really happened, tell us in the comments. What do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about this story? The green linoleum stretched 52 feet from cell to execution chamber. Every guard on E Block knew that measurement by heart. But what most fans never realize is that those who walked it most often were the ones who carried the heaviest burden, not the condemned men but the guards who led them there. And no one carried more weight than Paul Edgecombe. When Tom Hanks signed on to play the head guard of Cold Mountain Penitentiary's death row, he wasn't just accepting another role, he was honoring an unspoken debt. Hanks had been Frank Darabont's first choice for the Shawshank Redemption years earlier, but scheduling conflicts forced him to pass. That film went on to become one of the most beloved movies ever made, and Hanks chose Forrest Gump instead. When Darabont came calling again with another Stephen King prison story, Hanks didn't hesitate. But this wasn't just career repayment. Hanks approached the role with the kind of obsessive preparation that defined his craft. He visited Louisiana State Penitentiary, known as Angola, observing real correctional officers, studying their calm demeanor, their quiet authority, the way they balanced compassion with the cold reality of their job. He noted how they never raised their voices, how they spoke with deliberate restraint. That discipline became the foundation of Edgecombe's character. A man who could lead a man to his death and still sleep at night, barely. What viewers never saw, however, was the toll this world took on Hanks himself. He later admitted that The Green Mile was one of the most emotionally exhausting films of his career. The themes of injustice and mercy weighed on him long after the camera stopped rolling. Every execution scene required him to convey devastation without words, the trembling jaw, the averted eyes, the hands that gripped too tightly. He stayed in character even when Stephen King visited the set, remaining Paul Edgecombe even between takes. The author would later call it the most faithful adaptation of his work ever made. But Hanks wasn't the only one carrying the weight of this story. While he anchored the film with quiet restraint, another actor was about to step into a role that would define his career, and it almost didn't happen. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe so you never miss our next documentary. The casting of John Coffey almost didn't happen. And the man who made it possible wasn't Frank Darabont, Tom Hanks, or anyone else attached to the production. It was Bruce Willis, a man who wasn't even in the movie. In 1998, Michael Clarke Duncan was still a relative unknown. He'd spent years working as a bodyguard for celebrities like Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, digging ditches for the gas company in Chicago, and landing small roles wherever he could. Then came Armageddon. Bruce Willis saw something in the gentle giant, a warmth that radiated through the screen. And when Willis learned that Darabont was searching for the perfect actor to play John Coffey, he made a call that would change Duncan's life forever. According to Duncan himself, Willis said, "Michael, they're gonna be making a movie about this dude named John Coffey. I'm gonna call Frank Darabont and tell him that I found John Coffey." And he did. Willis called Darabont personally, vouching for the actor he'd just worked with. Weeks later, Duncan auditioned and won the role. But that was only the beginning of what the audience would never see. Because on that set, something unspoken began to happen, a bond formed not by script, but by the weight of the story they were all carrying together. The script was 620 pages. The first cut ran over 3 hours. And somewhere in that sprawling footage lay moments that would have broken audiences even more than the finished film already did. Frank Darabont, working from Stephen King's serialized novel, had crafted something so faithful that the author himself would later call it the best adaptation of his work ever made. But faithfulness came at a cost, and some of the most haunting material never made it past the editing room. 2 deleted scenes in particular carried weight that fans have spent decades wondering about. The first, titled Bitterbuck's Family Says Goodbye, showed the condemned Native American inmate's final moments with his loved ones before his execution. It was a quiet, devastating glimpse into the human cost of death row that Darabont ultimately deemed too painful for the final cut. The second, titled Coffey's Prayer, offered an extended look at John Coffey's spiritual side, deepening the tragedy of his fate. These scenes weren't discarded because they were weak, they were cut precisely because they were too powerful. What audiences never saw was the full scope of Michael Clarke Duncan's screen test. Running over 8 minutes, it captured something raw and unfiltered, an actor who hadn't yet fully become John Coffey but was already channeling something profound. Those who have seen it describe it as watching a performance being born in real time. And Tom Hanks's makeup tests for the elderly Paul Edgecombe? They failed so spectacularly that the producers abandoned the idea entirely, casting Dabbs Greer instead. Sometimes what stays hidden reveals more than what makes the final cut. If this story surprised you, share it with someone who would enjoy uncovering forgotten Hollywood stories. The cameras stopped rolling in 1999. The green linoleum was packed away. But the bonds forged on that soundstage never faded, especially not between Tom Hanks and the gentle giant he'd come to call Big Mike. Michael Clarke Duncan wasn't just a co-star to Hanks. He was something far rarer in Hollywood, a genuine friend. And when the phone rang on September 3, 2012, the news it carried would leave the cast stunned in a way no script ever could. Duncan had suffered a heart attack on July 13 of that year. He'd never fully recovered. At just 54 years old, the actor who had brought John Coffey to life with such heartbreaking tenderness was gone. Hanks released a statement that cut straight to the core of what Duncan meant to everyone who knew him. "I am terribly saddened at the loss of Big Mike. He was the treasure we all discovered on the set of The Green Mile. He was magic. He was a big love of man, and his passing leaves us stunned." Frank Darabont, the director who had taken a chance on a relatively unknown actor based on Bruce Willis's recommendation, echoed the sentiment. "Michael was the gentlest of souls, an exemplar of decency, integrity and kindness. The sadness I feel is inexpressible." But it was at Duncan's private memorial service that the true depth of their bond became clear. Hanks stood before the gathered mourners, Bruce Willis, Jay Leno, Charlie Sheen among them, and told stories that revealed the man behind the performance. He joked about Duncan's loopy and huge handwriting, describing it as looking like a 12-year-old girl who loves horses wrote it. Then Hanks shared something more profound. He told the story of a young Michael Clarke Duncan on the south side of Chicago, a boy who came home one day and announced he was going to join a gang. His mother didn't argue. She didn't plead. She hit him upside the head with a frying pan, still sizzling with pork chops inside. Hanks, mimicking Duncan's deep voice, recounted how the future actor explained to his would-be gang members that his mom simply wouldn't allow it. "If it wasn't for that mama and the frying pan with a pork chop, we would not be here today celebrating the life of Michael Clarke Duncan." That story encapsulated everything the cast had discovered on set. Behind the towering frame and the Oscar-nominated performance was a man whose mother had shaped him with love and a cast-iron skillet. When Hanks described Duncan's legacy, he kept it simple: it's his laugh. And when the actor was asked what Duncan had brought to The Green Mile, Hanks gave an answer that revealed why the film still resonates decades later. Mike was in charge of love. He just had a zest and joy. Stephen King, who had written the novel and watched the adaptation unfold, sent a letter to be read at the service. His words carried the weight of a man who'd seen his creation brought to life beyond his imagination. "No one has ever done a character I wrote more justice." It was the highest praise a writer could give, and a testament to the man who'd made John Coffey unforgettable. But there's one more piece to this story that most fans never uncover. A secret that involves the very moment Duncan learned he'd won the role, and the phone call he made immediately after. That revelation would show just how far he'd come from the south side of Chicago to the green linoleum of Cold Mountain Penitentiary. If you enjoyed this documentary, like the video and subscribe for more true celebrity stories every week.